Welcome to the Open Book with Amy and Tommy. And today it is Amy and Tommy. It is great to be back
It
together
is.
with you. And as we continue making our way through this series on making peace, and we've talked about making peace with God, making peace within ourselves. Today we're going to begin talking and thinking about making peace with others and our relationship with others. And we really begin that in our home and with our families. And today will be a story of two brothers and their parents and a whole lot of conflict and what forgiveness looks like. So let's just take a minute, and I encourage you all at home to think about this as well. And you're welcome to pause if you're visiting, if you're doing this study with other people, and share about your own family. So Tommy, tell us about your family growing up. Did you siblings, and did y'all get along? What was life like in the Bratton household for young Tommy?
Yes. Oh, wow. That's a scary thought to remember. But yeah, I do have one sister, and she is a younger sister of about 3.5 years. So when I was a senior in high school, she was a freshman. When I was a senior at Furman, she was a freshman at Furman. She actually ended up marrying my college roommate. So we have lots of stories that we can share, and I'm not going to share them on this one. But I do. Amy was reminding me even before this because I've told this story so many times of how much my sister drove me crazy watching the movie Annie. And from that time on, I think I probably am triggered by any song of Hard Knock Life or The Sun Will Come Out Tomorrow. All of those things just kind of remind me of all those frustrations because she would just take the VHS and she would run it over and over and over. As soon as it was done, she would start it back. So I have those images of growing up, and we laugh about that today. And I don't have a big problem with Annie today, but we laugh about how much that frustrated us. But there
But
were
if you
things,
want to have fun with Tommy, go up to him and sing
yeah,
a song
yeah.
from
Please
Annie.
don't,
You will get a reaction.
please don't. But I do. We had lots of little things. We never had any real big um, blow ups as kids. Just things that annoyed us about each other. But today, we can talk on the phone and laugh and cut up and remember the stories, and there's no frustration anymore. There's no emotion related to that. So it's a good thing to be able to let those things go, to release those, and to grow into some maturity, to let some of the things that we probably didn't know any better from
Yes.
childhood or youth or even college, and let those go so that we can renew relationships at each moment
Mhm,
of our lives. So
mhm.
yeah, that's a little bit about my sister. I don't want to say too much because she could possibly watch this. So I'll let you tell us about your sister.
I will be glad to tell you about my sister. I do have a twin sister. Um,
Mm,
and she always was and still is my best friend.
mm.
She knows me best. She gets me the most.
Is
And
she older or younger?
she's older by
Okay.
55 minutes.
All
Um,
right.
so so I was very stubborn being born. Um, so anyway, um we always got along, but when you share space, and the tricky thing with being a twin is you never really have your own space,
Mhm.
because we were in the same grade and we shared the same car and we had the same friends. And when we were in youth group or Sunday morning Bible study and we were divided up by grade, we were just always together. Now, generally that was fine because we were best friends and we had the same friends and we liked the same things. But there were times, and especially high school, I think there were some times in high school that were maybe the hardest because it had been 18 years of togetherness, and it was just it was a lot to share everything for that long. So we fought a lot our senior year in high school, And so, and we intentionally chose to go to separate colleges just to finally, for the first time in our lives, be in a place where we could be our own person. And I think, the thing that caused most of the fights probably for us were just always the comparisons of,
Mhm.
one of us always did better than the other. Somebody always did something first. And we weren't competitive over that, but everybody noticed and talked about that. And so, so that was our conflict. Um, and today's Bible story is about a set of twins. Now,
Yeah,
if you have seen a picture of my sister, we look just alike,
a lot alike.
a lot
Yeah,
alike.
a lot
The
alike. Maybe we
and if
can
you're
post some
around,
pictures into this if we have time.
oh yeah.
That would be
So
kind of fun.
I'll
I'll
put
see
a
if I can find
picture
one of my
here
daughter.
of me and my twin. A lot of times when twins get older, they begin to look more and more different. We just kept on looking just the same. Um, our Bible story today is about a set of twins, but unlike me and my sister, they did not have a lot in common. They didn't like the same things, they didn't look alike. But they still had a lot of conflict and a lot more than we did. So we're going to pick up, there's a lot of ground to cover because there's a lot of conflict between, the conflict really started at the very beginning when they were being born, and
Mhm.
Jacob went and reached for the ankle of Esau, kind of fighting in the womb. Scripture tells us they were fighting in the womb, and that carried forward into a lot of their life. We're going to focus on Genesis 33, but before Tommy reads that, let's remember kind of what has come before. So they fought their whole lives, um and this is a story of families. Family began with Abraham and Sarah, who had a son named Isaac. Isaac then married Rebekah, and they had these twin sons, Esau and Jacob. Esau was the firstborn, and so he had the birthright to an inheritance and a blessing from his father. So the brothers, were different. They looked different and they grew up to like different things. Esau liked to hunt. Jacob liked to cook and stay close to the tent where they lived. Esau was his father's favorite. Jacob was his mother's favorite. There was one day when Jacob was cooking lentil stew. Esau had come in from the field from hunting and was so hungry, and he said, "I'm starving. Give me some of that stew." And Jacob said, "Well, if you give me your birthright, I will give you some stew." Esau was so hungry that he agreed and traded his birthright for some food. Then, years later, their father Isaac was old and almost blind. And he said to Esau, "Go and hunt and make me my favorite food. Then I will give you a blessing as my oldest son before you die." But Jacob and Rebekah schemed a plan, so that Jacob could get that blessing instead. While Esau was out hunting, Rebekah, who again liked Jacob best, prepared a special meal, and Jacob took it in to his father. And he tricked Isaac into believing that he was his brother Esau with this meal because he was wearing Esau's clothes so he would smell like him. And he put animal skins on his arms so he would feel like Esau. And so Isaac blessed Jacob and not Esau. And Isaac told him, "You will rule over your brother, and many people will serve you." When Esau returned, from hunting, prepared a meal for his father, brought it in to give the meal and receive his blessing. And then Isaac and Esau both realized that Jacob had tricked them. And Esau cried and begged his father, "Bless me too." But Isaac could not. He had already given his blessing. Esau was so mad that he wanted to kill Jacob. And Rebekah intervened again, knowing how angry Esau was. And so Rebekah sent Jacob far away to keep him safe from Esau. And while he was away, Jacob got married and became a very wealthy man. But he still knew there was this disconnect with his brother. And after 20 years, Jacob decided that he wanted to go home. As he and his family journeyed back toward Esau, he heard that his brother was coming toward them. And that's where our Bible story begins today. And so, Tommy, would you read the story for us?
Yeah, we're glad to. Again, we're going to be looking at Genesis 33. Now Jacob looked up and saw Esau coming, and 400 men with him. So he divided the children among Leah and Rachel and the two maids. He put the maids with their children in front, then Leah with her children, and Rachel and Joseph last of all. He himself went on ahead of them, bowing himself to the ground 7 times until he came near his brother. But Esau ran to meet him and embraced him, and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. When Esau looked up and saw the women and children, he said, "Who are these with you?" Jacob said, "The children whom God has graciously given your servant." Then the maids drew near, they and their children, and bowed down. Leah likewise and her children drew near and bowed down. And finally, Joseph and Rachel drew near, and they bowed down. Esau said, "What do you mean by all this company that I met?" Jacob answered, "To find favor with my Lord." But Esau said, "I have enough. My brother, keep what you have for yourself." Jacob said, "No, please. If I find favor with you, then accept my present from my hand. For truly to see your face is like seeing the face of God, since you have received me with such favor. Please accept my gift that is brought to you, because God has dealt graciously with me, and because I have everything I want." So he urged him, and he took it. Then Esau said, "Let us journey along our way, and I will go alongside you." But Jacob said to him, "My Lord knows that the children are frail, and that the flocks and herds which are nursing are a care to me. And if they are overdriven for one day, all the flocks will die. Let my Lord pass on ahead of his servant, and I will lead on slowly, according to the pace of the cattle that are before me, and according to the pace of the children, until I come to my Lord in Seir." So Esau said, "Let me leave with you some of the people who are with me." But he said, "Why should my Lord be so kind to me?" So Esau returned that day on his way to Seir, but Jacob journeyed to Succoth, and built himself a house, and made booths for his cattle. Therefore, the place is called Succoth. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. So it's that this is a lot.
A lot.
So maybe I want to begin with this question, and you may have something else you want to begin with, but um is there a character in the story that you most identify with today?
Wow. That's a hard question. I'm
It
not
is a
sure.
hard question.
Not sure I know the answer to that at this
Yeah.
point.
Well, and it's
I've
also
been doing a lot of
hard.
work on Jacob
Mhm.
recently. I'm thinking about preaching in a couple of weeks on Jacob's dream, the
Mm,
ladder to heaven. So I've
mhm.
been thinking about, what does it feel like to be someone who has kind of tricked another person, had
Yeah,
to flee, and then comes back to that person again.
yeah.
So I think I've kind of relating a little bit to Jacob. Not, I don't know if it's personally or just trying to empathize with what this could feel like, because I brothers, I could easily see, hey, give me something to eat. Oh, if you trade your birthright,
Mhm,
and okay, whatever. But what kind of legally binding thing is that?
mhm.
And it even feels like when Jacob gets the blessing instead of Esau, that it's a trick. So why wouldn't Isaac just say, "Hey, you tricked me. This is not for you. It's for Esau." But
Right, right,
it
right,
feels
right,
like
right.
there's some weird binding things that I always wonder what Jacob thought was happening.
Mhm.
And then how he actually starts to understand his part in the covenant being passed on.
Yes.
And maybe Esau understands that too in some ways. Maybe
Mhm.
there's been some conversation. But I also know after time, I think some people when you know you've done someone wrong, it just kind of builds and builds and builds. And so forgiveness, when it happens, feels so much like a relief. And
Yes.
and I sense that. And we always worry about what other people are thinking. And did I do
Yeah.
something? And do they
Yes.
still like me? Or, how's this going to work? Are they so mad at me that they're just going to jump into me? And when they don't, it feels like a grace. And you can let
Yes.
go and all the tension releases, and you can reconcile. So
Absolutely.
I'm going to say Jacob at this point, but I mean, Jacob and Esau both have these wonderful things that we all need to have inside of us.
Well, and I think the thing that's hard is really if we look at it, we both can, because both of them show weakness and faults, and both of them show redemptive qualities and things that we want to be like. Because both, with Jacob, I want to be the type of person who can take responsibility for things that I have done wrong and ask for forgiveness and work to make them right. And not that I'm entitled to, but as he comes back to his brother and with gifts, and there's a lot of fear in that, but it's really hard. And I think particularly in our culture, we are not good at talking about and admitting any weakness or failure. And from little children to highly successful business execs,
Yeah.
there are stories of people who go to great lengths to cover and mask their faults. And also, I want to be like Esau. We also can relate to being so angry. I mean, maybe not. I've never wanted to kill somebody, but I can really think about times that I've been really angry and hurt by someone's decision. Um, but also what a gift it is to be able to forgive somebody and just release, any and all of those feelings and resentment. And so just the gift of forgiveness and the power of forgiveness. Um,
I was reading a little about the Truth and Reconciliation Commission that, started in uh, South Africa.
mhm.
But also, there's been a Truth and Reconciliation happening in Greensboro after the Greensboro massacres back in the 60s, whenever that was. I know Mac has done a lot of work on that with his THD, but I think it's interesting to think about kind of the goals of the Truth and Reconciliation is to be able to speak of how each experience affected us, and to be
Yes.
able to listen to the other person to see, wow, that's how it affected you too. So these stories aren't the sanitized version of the story. They're how it actually felt to the person affected. And
Hmm.
to hear those stories and to be able to be affected by them, to offer some type of forgiveness, if not, you know, forgiveness kind of means in scripture letting go or releasing
Hmm.
probably all the burdens, and it comes first from God, but then also trying to make sure that this is not something that happens again. So when I
Right.
think about this story, there's um, there's a manipulation. There's it's not violent, but it's in some ways it's a taking from
Hmm.
your brother and then leaving so that
Yes.
you have it and you go. So there's something very terrible about that. And then the worry that Esau is going to come back and retaliate. Um, but when Esau comes back, this isn't going to happen again.
Right.
There's some kind of truth and reconciliation that we need to fall into, that I
Mhm.
recognize that this was not ideal. You did,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
at the same time, we're brothers. We're we're part of the covenant,
Hmm.
and forgiveness is something that we need to do so this doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
violence could have happened, but instead violence didn't happen because
Right.
forgiveness happened instead.
Yeah. We are just naturally selfish. I mean, that's just kind of
Mhm.
our instinct, is to think about ourselves and
Yeah.
self-preservation. And so we want to make sure that we have enough. We want to make sure And there's something in forgiveness that requires letting go and listening. So I like that, because so many times when we approach a conflict with somebody, we're really defensive of like, well, I know that I did, even if we can say, well, I know that I did wrong, but, we make excuses, we do whatever to rationalize just to so
The woman gave me the fruit, and God gave me the woman, and the
right.
snake made me do it, and
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah, it's always pointing
from the
fingers
beginning.
from the beginning. And but when we can stop and listen and hear each other's stories um
Mhm.
and talk about and think about what the experience is like. And so what I did and how that affects and impacted so not just defending, well, I mean, I was really tired or I was really hungry, and so I
Yeah,
um but just being able to hear and think about, um because there's so many things that we don't understand, and there is a part of and forgiveness, some of the work of forgiveness,
mm,
um and and forgiveness is hard work, and let's
right,
talk about that for a minute too. And I think, um I we've probably all heard a lot, forgive and forget, forgive and forget. um and in some cases, yes, there are some wrongs that we just need to let go of and forget and move forward, but there are some things that are not quite so easy. What does forgiveness look like? And I remember a time with a really difficult situation, in a previous congregation, and having to kind of wrestle with someone who had done something really terrible, not involved in the church, outside of the church, and and working with someone to talk about, I know I'm supposed to forgive, but what this person did was just not right. And
mhm,
learning that forgiveness is not forgetting, and is not saying what you did is okay. Forgiveness has to do with letting go, giving the situation and person to God, and not let all of my feelings just continue
yeah,
to consume me. um but you can't move forward as a person, as a group, depending on the situation, without finding forgiveness. So, do you have any insights, thoughts on forgiveness, what it
yeah.
looks like, or what it means, or how it works for you?
One of the things that's a little tough in this story is the forgiveness. It feels a little bit easier because Esau seems to have everything he needs. His life seems to be going the way that he wants it. Because when he's offered from gifts of restoration, um, then he says, I don't need these. Things are okay for me. Um, so you just keep your stuff. And then, but, but Isaac needs to repair the relationship by giving the reparations um, to Esau, for even though he doesn't necessarily need them. But and you would think it could be possible, because you mentioned like generational um, things that we might not have experienced, that kind of we need to be forgiven for the benefit we have received from what others have done in the past. And
Mhm.
we weren't a part of that, but we did receive the benefit of that. So how do we repair a relationship? By helping recognize that story.
Mhm.
I think one of the interesting parts of this is when I think about forgiveness, I think it is rooted in the forgiveness that God offers us.
Mhm.
And I say this a lot. It's a Kierkegaard thing. It's like sometimes we see ourselves subjectively, and we know why we did what we did, and we can sometimes get around to saying, "Oh yeah, it's because of this," and I didn't really mean anything bad by it. But then we see other people objectively, and we think, "Wow, they intentionally meant to hurt my feelings,"
Mhm.
and that may not have been the case either. Kierkegaard says we need to switch it. We need to start seeing others subjectively, maybe give them the benefit of the doubt. Think that maybe they weren't intending to hurt our feelings like they did.
Right.
See ourselves a little more objectively, so that we need to not just always give ourselves the benefit of the doubt, but to say,
Right.
yeah, you know what? I really messed that up. So there's
Mhm.
one thing, and then I'm going to say the opposite, is that sometimes it's really hard to forgive ourselves because
Yes.
we say something that we didn't intend to, and we break a relationship that we really want to restore, and we start blaming ourselves a lot, and it just builds on itself, and we start thinking bad about ourselves. What I've learned is that usually in situations like that, the other people are less worried about it than we are.
Yes.
And if we just take one step and say, I've been thinking about this a lot. I did not mean to hurt your feelings. And they're like, I don't even know what you're talking about. But
Right.
we're able to release it by asking for forgiveness, even if
Mm.
the other person hasn't thought about it much since then.
Yes. Yeah.
That's just how we work. So I think we need to recognize we need forgiveness by God for what we've done and not done. We need to forgive ourselves at times for things that we did not intend.
Yes.
And then we need to offer that forgiveness to others, assuming maybe they didn't intend it either.
Mhm.
And even if they did, we can let it go and
Yes.
release that from something that we're constantly thinking about.
Right. Right, because who is better by holding on
Yeah.
to anger and hurt for years and years, and a lifetime, and some people do, and all of this to say, and I love that you said, well, I'm going to say this, and then I'm going to say the opposite of this, because
This is a
here's
lot.
the reality, and here maybe where we land today is forgiveness is very complicated and it's very difficult and it's essential. Um, and so, I would say it begins with and is rooted and grounded in prayer.
Mm.
Um, Praying for yourself to be able to release some of that and praying for the person or situation. Um, and through prayer, sometimes can begin to see a person or situation through God's eyes and God's lens versus your own. Um, so it's rooted and grounded in prayer, but also in seeing and hearing each other, to drop the defensiveness and to consider the other or others.
So I'm thinking about this text again, is something I was just kind of contemplating is boundaries. Sometimes when forgiveness can happen, but boundaries still need to be set. And I was thinking
Yes.
about Esau at the end of this text when Jacob comes to him, it still feels a little transactional probably to Esau. Let me give you these things so that you will forgive me.
Yes.
Kind of like,
Yes.
I will give you some food if you will give me your birthright.
Right.
But it's until Esau recognizes or is willing to say, I don't need anything. I don't need an exchange with you. I've set that boundary now. I will give you forgiveness despite anything that you give me.
Yes.
But also, Jacob recognizes that, okay, this is not something I can buy my way out of. But
Hmm.
at the same time, I want to give this as a gift.
Yes.
I want to restore the relationship.
Hmm.
And this is, I really just want to give you a gift. And at
Yeah.
that point, after Esau said, no transaction, he does accept the gift and they
Hmm.
go on their ways and they've restored.
Hmm.
Reconciliation is a key to all of scripture. That's
Yes.
what we reconcile ourselves to God and to one another. And the way we love other people is the way we love God. And all of that stuff kind of is essential to each other.
Hmm.
So Jesus tells us if we're unwilling to forgive, we can't really experience the forgiveness that
Right.
God even has in store for us because it's just so far from how we understand life. So
Yes.
I think the boundaries are important,
Mm-hmm.
and the transactions, relationships are not transactional.
Yes.
They're built in love and trust and respect and caring for each other and forgiveness. So I think that's a great move toward peacemaking, to stop all the violence and division, and instead to reach out to one another in love and grace and forgiveness.
Yes. Yes. That that is a good word. Anything else you have as we wrap up?
No, I think
Great.
that there's so much in that text that we could sit here all day and talk about it. So I think it's good to
There is so much
kind
in
of
this,
turn it over to your
and
Bible study groups and let them talk about it.
yes, and we'll continue through the next couple weeks, continuing to explore complicated relationships in Scripture and think about forgiveness as we continue to consider how we can make peace and keep peace with each other. So join us again next week,
Yep.
as we continue exploring this together. We were so glad that you were with us today. We're so glad to be back together today, and we'll continue through the summer. And some weeks it'll be one of us, some weeks it'll be both of us. But for every week, we're grateful to be doing this together. So thanks for joining us, and until we see you again, go in peace.
Go in peace.